Biden just came out and said that a recession is not inevitable, so I guess it's official now. We will definitely be having a recession, and it's probably going to be a pretty bad one. But all jokes aside, go ahead and hit that like button and let's get started. The Fed just had their June meeting, and in that meeting they said that they don't see any signs that a recession is actually on the way. But I think they're probably lying, because just like they said inflation was going to be transitory, they're just trying to prevent a self-fulfilling prophecy from coming true, because when people think there's going to be inflation, they go out and buy things to try to get ahead of it, and this causes inflation to continue higher. The opposite is true for a recession as well, because when people think they're not going to have money in the future, they start to save their money now, and that slows down the economy even further. For this reason, I think the Fed is not going to tell us what they really think is going to happen, because they don't want us to talk ourselves into a situation that they're trying to avoid. Inflation has been running out of control, and the Fed has been tasked with getting it down. So the Fed has been trying to find the mythical neutral interest rate, which is a rate which is just high enough to cancel out inflation without slowing the economy down so much that we go into a recession. If they can pull that off, then they will achieve the soft landing that they say they're going to, but in the past they haven't really been too great at doing that. Their track record's not too great when it comes to pulling off a soft landing, and nobody really does know where the neutral interest rate is. The problem is that they're running on delayed data, because a recession is technically 2 negative quarters of GDP in a row, and the Fed has a meeting every month, and they're trying to tell what is going to happen going off of what they expect the numbers to be in the data that they get in the future. They keep getting it wrong, however, causing them to fall behind the curve. And if the Fed doesn't get ahead of the curve, they might not be able to get interest rates high enough to stop the economy from collapsing when we do finally see a recession. And if they do continue raising interest rates into a slowing economy, they could cause it to crash harder than they expect it to. When an economy slows down, it's usually because people don't have enough money to spend. So the Fed usually lowers interest rates to make it easier for people to borrow money so that they can spend it and the economy can start to move again. But right now we have inflation, and that's why the Fed has been raising interest rates to try to make it harder for people to borrow money, and therefore making it harder to spend, slowing the economy and bringing down inflation. The Fed did just raise rates by 75 basis points, the highest rate hike that they've done since 1994. But a lot of people are saying that it's not enough because it's about to be too late to raise rates, and the economy can quickly slow ahead of the release of the data that the Fed is currently working off of. We've already had 1 negative quarter of GDP coming in at negative 1.4% and then being revised to negative 1.5%. If we have one more negative quarter, we will officially be in a recession, and pretty soon on June 29th, we will get the GDP estimate, which could all but confirm that the recession is here. We won't know officially though until July 28th when we get the advanced estimate, and on that day I'm predicting that they will officially announce that we're in a recession, and then the fun can actually start. With the national price per gallon rising towards $6 per gallon, people are spending way too much money on essentials. Also, the World Bank just cut global growth forecast to 2.9%, saying that we could see stagflation and many countries could go into a recession. The second quarter earnings will show the reality of the situation, as the Fed, in my opinion, is purposely putting us into a recession because they have to bring down inflation at all costs. When they say an economy is overheating, it's because demand is growing faster than the supply. Recently, we've obviously had way too much money in the economy, but due to the supply chain issues piling up on top of the insanely stupid amount of money that the government continues to spend, we were already overheating the economy, causing prices to go up and putting us in danger of a wage price spiral. Then the Ruskies invaded Ukraine, and now we cut off Russia from all of our money by refusing to buy their oil. We only used to get 8% of our oil from Russia, and they produce about 12% of the world's oil. So why is gas up more than 100% since the start of their war? This causes transporting goods to cost more money, and of course those costs are passed on to you. More people are now paying way too much money for essentials and can't afford to participate in the broader economy. This is why we're starting to see the economy slow down, and unfortunately though, we aren't starting to see inflation come down. So I would say that we're already in a stagflationary environment, because that's the definition of stagflation. Rising costs with slowing economy equals stagflation, and it could get worse before it gets better. When we finally start to see inflation hit a peak, if the Fed doesn't get rates high enough, they might not have enough leverage to pull the economy out of a recession. And this is where it could go from bad to worse, because about 15% of publicly traded businesses are zombie companies.
This is now the United States of Zombieland.
A zombie company is a company that has so much debt that they're barely able to keep themselves afloat by paying the minimum interest payment on their debt. Collectively, they hold more than $2 trillion in debt while also employing 2.2 million people. If the economy slows to a point where these companies can no longer service their debts, then they will look to the Fed to lower interest rates to a level where they can service those debts. And if the Fed can't or they fail to do so, I'm sure you can see that this will definitely cause some pretty big problems. If even 10% of these companies couldn't service their debts and they had to file for bankruptcy, $200 billion could just disappear from the economy and 220,000 people could lose their jobs. With the unemployment rate surging as a result and the Fed defenseless to lower rates and stop the recession, the economy would continue to slow as people grow fearful of losing their jobs as well and stop spending money, in turn destroying the profit margins for companies that are already on the brink, sending them over the edge and causing the cycle to repeat. As people continue having less money to spend due to economic woes, prices will continue to drop, and people who can afford to buy things in the economy will just try to wait for prices to continue dropping further so that they can afford to buy more stuff. As prices continue to drop, companies will have less money to pay their workers, leading to layoffs, and the snake will continue eating its tail as the economy descends into a deflationary spiral. This is how we could end up in the next Great Depression, but if that doesn't happen and the Fed somehow pulls off a somewhat soft landing, then they will have successfully kicked the can down the road and put this crisis off for a later date. Those zombie companies still exist and their numbers continue to grow. Our economy is built on debt, and one day everybody is going to realize that nobody has as much money as they think they do. We still have interest rates in a long-term downtrend, and the Fed is going to continue getting squeezed tighter and tighter into this corner, only being able to raise interest rates a little bit at a time, edging closer and closer to the day that it's just not enough to pull this economy out of the next recession. Let me know in the comments, do you guys think that this next recession is going to be unstoppable, or do you think that the Fed is going to get their raise rates just high enough that they can bring the economy back to life? Either way, thank you guys so much for watching and hitting that like button. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.